Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our review and reaction to Silo Season 1, Episode 6. We hope you all went out and supported your local Pez dispenser location. Where do the young kids get Pez dispensers these days? Probably a drugstore. Anyway, this episode is titled The Relic. We have a pretty big exploration of relics. We have a particularly huge reveal at the end.
And a really important big relic. I mean, we're going to get into this pamphlet that shows things that people in the silo would have never seen before, like people boating in lakes and trees. Like they just wouldn't know that these things exist. This is completely new to them that, could really change everything. Of course, the huge reveal at the end. Who is watching them? I think a lot of us have felt, myself included, that this was an experiment that, what are this is man-made, this silo, like somebody made it for a reason. And was it just to help them from the rebels? No, people are watching them.
There's clearly a lot to get into there, and we will dive into all of it, but be sure to also check out our Patreon. If you guys did not know, we have some exclusive Silo video content over there. I think
Yep.
the specter of Allison and Holston still looms very large on this show, and over there we talk all about what happened to them, where are they, if we're even going to see them again. Like, it's a fun discussion. We hope you guys check it out, and thank you to those who are supporting us over there.
Also, if you're not watching from, it is such a good show. And if you're really enjoying Silo and sort of the idea of a society all in one place, From is also exploring a lot of that. It's by the executive producers of Lost, and it's really good. And so check that out as well. But we also have another question for you guys.
Yeah.
Just let us know in the comments. How many of you are planning to watch The Walking Dead Dead City? It's coming up soon. We've been talking about it. We're not sure if we should cover it here at the channel. And we wanted your guys' opinion on, is that something you're interested in? And if you are, let us know in the comments.
Yes, please, and thank you very, very much. Now, let's start with the pamphlet for a
Oh
second
my
here.
goodness, we can't start anywhere else. It is all about that pamphlet.
Okay. Did anyone else? I'm a child of the 90s, so this reminded me a lot of like going to the doctor's office when you're a kid and you get like those little books that are like 8 or 12 pages and you just open them and they're the most amazing thing you've ever seen, and then you're like halfway through and the doctor calls you in and you never find out what the ending is. That reminded me a lot of that, where it was like something so simple and delicate, yet contains the very secrets that tear open the fabric of the universe.
Yeah, and I mean, like we said, somebody is watching them. We saw this last shot of these two guys who are watching all these monitors, are watching Juliette with this pamphlet as she's looking through it, being like, what is this? What are these things? This is out in the world? Uh-oh. And we saw one of them even turn and say, okay, go get him. So who is him? Him to me is whoever is running this experiment. And it's really opened things up as well because, like Matt said, we have a video over on our Patreon talking a bit about Allison and Holston, and we've been talking about this idea that there is an experiment going on and that maybe they have figured it out, or they have been sort of brought back to him, which has now been revealed that somebody is watching them. And I've always felt that if there's an experiment going on, typically at this large of a scale, when experiments like this are happening, there are plants. There's going to be people that are in the silo that know what's going on, and that they're in there to sort of keep order. And I don't mean like the sheriff is keeping order, or even Judge Meadows is keeping order, but just people who are in there that are watching out, the listeners, the watchers, to make sure that everybody's not trying to dig a little deeper, being able to plug those holes as they come up. Like, George is asking too many questions. Okay, let's just take care of George, because then that helps keep the order.
I think there are a lot of different sort of questions and angles to look at this. And I think ultimately, the experiment is, I mean, your experiment theory seems to be the one that's the most obvious at this point, following the reveal of this episode. Like a super crazy, super tinfoil hat idea I had here, and this is probably not the case, but you know what? I enjoy saying things anyway. So, what if the Silo is like the descendants of like a losing group of people that were a part of some series of just showdowns in the past, many, many generations ago, and the victors have sort of all trapped the descendants in this silo, and they're just sort of watching them to see if they ever have to be worried about an uprising. And, you know, maybe they have some sort of heart and they don't want to wipe out this entire group of people entirely. They want to let them live in their own delusion a little bit. But I think regardless of if you're going in that angle, you're going in the experiment angle, I think the reality of the situation is that clearly there are people who are watching them who do not want them to know the truth. And you can sort of make this interesting connection here of, okay, well, are these people, they go and ask for him, is this the same him that paid Regina a visit, as sort of defined by that conversation we saw with Juliette a little bit earlier on in the episode? And she refers to it in a very particular way with this man, and part of it is admittedly slipping my mind, but this is a man who clearly is not known to her in the sense that like she would name him. And so that just makes me feel like this is not somebody who is this big public authoritative figure on the silo, because then she would just say it's Bob or it's John
or it's Sims or it's Bernard or Doug paid me a visit. And yeah, like originally when she was kind of like, listen, like I, decided to give up everybody, all the relic sellers and traders and everything like that, because this man came and threatened me and threatened my family, threatened every person I loved in the middle of the night. I mean, at first I was like, okay, well, if it is someone like Sims or Doug or somebody that is very well known, maybe she wouldn't want to say who they are because of that, they would easily be able to just disappear her or her whole family if she said who it was. But then we had this big reveal at the end with go get him. And I was like, okay, then is him able to go in and out of the silo and make these visits? But then wouldn't people be talking about it? That's why I keep landing back at this idea that there are plants in this silo that are working for him and that they have shown up to tell Regina, you need to like give up all the relic dealers so that, you and your family will be fine. But, there is a lot of people in the silo. And even though they've all been there a long time, 10,000 people is a lot of people. And not everybody does go up and down the silo. So maybe it's just somebody she doesn't know, but they're working for him.
Okay, see, I believe what you're saying is true. And where I think it's going
I don't know. We'll see.
I believe. Belief can move mountains. Okay, so here's where things get even more weird to me, because this is at least what I want. Who knows if this will be what happens, but I really like the idea that Judicial on this show and Judge Meadows and Sims and all these people are basically just paper tigers, where they think they got all this power, that they're, the kings and queens of the jungle. And, when you're in these positions, you feel yourself, you start to like kind of strut around and do your thing and collapse onto power however you can. But what if they really know nothing, Jon Snow? What if they are just sort of meant to be these figureheads, and whoever the him is somebody who is just more hiding in plain sight? Because I think it's far more fascinating if that is the case. And also, if you are Sims or if you are Judge Meadows, you can't walk down the street and be among, the common folk. They're not going to tell you everything. You gotta be the ultimate undercover officer here. And obviously this is like a title that would have to be passed down super secretly from one generation to the next, and nobody can say anything if this is the case and they're not going in and out. Like, this is really like freakishly delicate.
They have to be offered something pretty important to be able to do that, because I don't think Judge Meadows is a plant. I just think that it would be too obvious. People would start to pick up on some strangeness about that. I think it has to be somebody like a Patrick or a Martha or somebody that you really wouldn't suspect. I'm not saying it's them, but I'm just saying, like, I I feel like one of the plants is somebody we've met, like whether we've met them just kind of briefly, like your boy Hank, uh, or if it is somebody that we've seen more often, like a Martha or something like that. It's just it's hard to know right now, but I think somebody in there is a plant. But it was very interesting to see sort of that conversation between Regina and Juliette of like who George really was. Maybe. I mean, clearly Regina had a bad experience with
Yeah.
him where she was just like, yeah, he was my boyfriend and, he gassed me up and loved me and was with me. And then, I gave him all the relics that he could desire. And then all of a sudden he moved on to someone else. Oh, it's you? Yeah, well, that makes sense because he needed somebody sort of down in machinery, and now you've popped up. So did he tell you he loved you too? Oh, he did? Cool.
I feel for Juliet, especially I really like her as a character because sometimes romantic subplots can be cheesy or, not put together well, but she's kind of been established as just sort of like this tough and hardened person. And I kind of like the dichotomy of, okay, oh, she can also be really vulnerable and she can have
Mhm.
this connection with somebody who, as it turns out, had many a secret from her. And I think it puts her into this sort of spiraling position where she is just sort of like, do I really trust anyone at this point? Do I even still be a sheriff? And this is where, I like what you said about Martha in particular, because just like, how devastating would it now be if it is like, oh, and then it's also Martha, this like motherly person who is very caring and looks out that she is actually the secret plant this whole time. It would just be like putting worse on top of worse for her. And I think Juliet's just going to have to realize over time here that the only way out of this is just to go completely through it. She doesn't know how bad a position she's in right now, but she is clearly past the point of no return.
Yeah, and I mean, it's hard for Juliet too because she has no way to confirm or sort of not confirm what George's feelings were, only her memories, which is what we saw her going through this whole episode of thinking back and thinking about those moments and, are they real? Are they not real? Am I doing this for the right reason? Is it for George? Is it for myself? Like, how is this really all coming together? Because just because George did that to Regina doesn't mean that he did actually do that to Juliet as well. Or maybe he did and he just didn't get to the part where he dumps her yet. It's difficult to know. Do we think that Juliet is really going to just dump the badge and go back to the bottom? I don't think so yet. I mean, it is possible that she does decide to do something else, but I don't know. Not at this point.
I would be stunned. Like, I would be so stunned that I may end up turning into one of the zombies from The Walking Dead Dead City if we're in a situation where all of a sudden she just was like, okay, you know what? Now that I got this book and I've learned this, catastrophic bit of news that I never had before, I'm done. Peace out. I'll see. I think she's got to hold on to the badge at this point. It's more interesting this way.
Maybe. I mean, there's also the possibility that she knows that about the Pez dispenser. So obviously she planted this at Doug's place and Sims is like, how convenient that this is, shows up here when we know that it was with George and we know that you're sniffing around, all that. Sims revealed that while, the police department is able to look up some relic stuff, Judicial actually has a deeper database of all of that stuff. So wouldn't it be kind of interesting if she, now that she knows this, is like, this is where I actually need to have a job?
It's an interesting angle. I mean, I don't know what the process is like with Judicial. I don't know what they would feel towards her, but at the same time, she has shown she's very capable. She's very smart. She might be viewed as, oh, you're trouble because you clearly want to know a lot of stuff, but you can use trouble, I think, for your favor at the same time. And speaking of potential trouble here, let's have a talk a little bit here about, Bernard, your guy Bernard here.
My guy Bernard.
That's right. That's right.
If I have just piling him on me.
If I have Hank, you can have Bernard. Hank eats people's hush puppies. I think you're getting off better right now.
I think Bernard is a killer.
See, okay, here's the thing. Here's why you might be right here about Bernard. This is why he's your guy, because you have pegged him already.
All right.
So Bernard, he said something in this episode, which, by the way, anytime someone ever says this, you know immediately you should not trust them. Maybe some things are better off as a mystery.
I know.
You, Bernard, just shut up. Nobody believes you. I mean, maybe you're responsible for these deaths, maybe you're not. But I think just the fact that you're just like, we shouldn't look into this thing that's like really, really fascinating anymore. Just as like, okay, you know what? You clearly just want to sit atop your paper throne. You don't want anybody to pay attention. Or maybe you just want to have a bunch of other like street-wide celebrations of people running around as opposed to this. Maybe you just don't like the stress. But I don't trust you.
Oh, I don't know. No, I feel like he is behind the murder of the mayor. And maybe we will never know, but maybe we'll figure it out. But let's talk about Billings, since we're talking about, the death of the mayor and everything else that's sort of moved all these pieces around. I found it really interesting, the position that he's in now and Juliette is in now, because he now knows about George, which is, an unsanctioned relationship. He knows that she put the Pez dispenser there, and he was like, I could have been sent out to clean for that. I'm the person that found it. And then you pointed at me like, how dare you? I have a family, I have a baby, I have a wife. Like, how could you do that to me? And I know. And then on the opposite side, now Juliette is like, well, I know that you have the syndrome, that you have this silo syndrome, and you haven't turned yourself in. You haven't told anybody. So now with all our sort of mistrust of each other and we know each other's secrets, are these two actually going to be able to come together and trust each other in a way that they were never able to before?
I think it's a fair thing to wonder, and I think it probably is going to be the case just because they each have an incentive to hold on to this relationship now, where if something goes south, it could go south for one or both of them at this point. And this syndrome, let's talk a little bit about this syndrome. So here's what I think could be going on here. Silo is a very big but very contained place at the same time. I get allergies sometimes just for being around like too much cat hair or pollen gets into the place and those are really small places, and those are places that don't have fresh air for generations at a time. I think it's pretty easy to imagine the idea that there's just something like floating around through the silo, and a lot of times things do kind of rise higher and higher over time, and it's feels pretty inevitable to me that there would be some sort of sickness that kind of stems from being in this place for this long a period of time. And it's obviously been around long enough to the point that, one, they have a name for it. Two, they have circumstances that are sort of handed over in the event somebody has it. Like, you're not supposed to be carrying a weapon anymore. So none of this is new. And yet Billings still wants to hold on to this job, obviously, because you may be viewed as not a full-on pariah or anything, but there are very much limitations that are put on you. So I understand it is an interesting layer for this character.
Yeah, I agree. I think it has something to do with the silo or just the environment. I mean, you have obviously oxygen, it's being able to be run and everything, but sunlight, what do they have? Artificial sunlight? Like, it's like, how long does any of that really work for you? I would think that, having shaky hands and stuff like that, it can really do something to bodies. But again, is this part of the experiment? Is it that it is, how quickly can people get sick, or what type of sicknesses would happen if people are just living underground? Or is it, will people try to figure their way out? Like, the fact that this is probably, not necessarily for sure, but probably an experiment, the why behind it is way more fascinating to me. But speaking about this syndrome, anybody else out there think that maybe Judge Meadows has it? Because, I mean, she was not looking that great, and she said, I'm not feeling that great. Like, I'm not feeling good, but I'm here anyways. And, she's having a drink, but she's not shaking, but like, she didn't look like she was doing that well.
Sims is just preparing to become Judge Sims. Like, I kind of wonder this to some extent. Like, he's a very ambitious individual, shall we say.
He is.
And if Judge Meadows is not doing that great, maybe he doesn't have to even do here what happened to Doug in this past episode. Maybe he's just buying his time. I think Sims is obviously going to be a very important character, and my hilarious justification for this is he's in the poster, even though there are people in the poster who are already gone from the show.
I was going to say, there's other people who were big stars that came on the show that were in like one episode. Hey. So like, could they bring Commons on and just like, you know, kill them off? Sure.
I want to believe that a couple of the people other than Juliette there are important, and I think in general, we're just being set up for some big reveals that are going to play out a little bit over time. The only thing that I really wish this episode had, because I think this really was a good episode and it actually pushed things forward in a way that even the last couple did not, is I wanted more of like, you know, the stars that are outside. I wanted to kind of explore that sort of stuff a little bit more because it was such a kind of cool reveal, and amidst everything else that was going on, sort of the idea of the sky or the projections, that kind of all was backburnered a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he's a plant too. Now I'm just like...
You're just running around doing this like it's the mole.
That's starting to be what it feels like. I mean, that reveal was just such a huge reveal that all the monitors and that they're watching, like it was just, like
yeah,
somebody in this silo is working with him. They are. There's no way that they're going to have whatever's going on, this experiment or simulation or whatever's going on. They're not going to have it going on without having somebody in there. It's too large scale.
Okay, with that, we're just going to ask you guys, who is him? Who is working with him? And I don't mean him like, you know, the young people say it now where they're like, I'm him, which means like, I'm really good. This him is just like ominous, but let us know your theories. Thank you so much to our patrons. Check out our Patreon below for discussion all about Allison Holston, what happened to them, and we'll see you here next time.